Her ankle was swollen, but not nearly as swollen as her pride. She sat on the med cot glaring at me like I'd insulted her entire bloodline. My hands worked quickly, wrapping gauze, checking her pulse, keeping it strictly professional. Maybe too professional. Every time my fingers brushed her skin, she twitched, not in pain, but like she was testing me. "You're very gentle," she murmured, eyes following my every move. Her voice had that lilting purr, the kind predators get before they pounce. "It's called bedside manner," I muttered, focusing on the compression wrap. "Keeps patients calm." She tilted her head. "Or is it because you're afraid to touch me properly?" My hands froze for half a beat before I moved again. "I'm here to treat your injury. That's all." Her smirk deepened, as if I'd just confirmed her suspicion. "On my world, a male who rescues a female but does not claim her is either already mated or broken." I rolled my eyes. "I'm either." "Then what are you?" she pressed, leaning forward enough for me to catch the faintest whiff of her scent, warm spice and danger. "I'm a medic," I said flatly. "Not a mating candidate." "That," she said slowly, "sounds like something a broken male would say." I pulled the bandage tighter than necessary. She hissed, but not in pain, in delight. My face must have shown confusion because she grinned. "Oh, I like that. You have claws after all." "I don't have claws," I muttered. "Not literal ones," she said, her gaze deliberately flicking downward before meeting my eyes again. "Though I am beginning to wonder if you have anything else at all." "Excuse me? You've touched my leg, my foot, my knee, yet you avoid all the places a real male would seek first," she said, her tone dripping with suggestion. "That's because I'm not trying to seduce you." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Then you are broken." I sighed and tried to ignore the heat crawling up my neck. "Your ankle is sprained. That's the problem here." "No," she corrected softly. "The problem here is you." Her eyes didn't waver, didn't blink. She watched me like a puzzle she was determined to solve. My fingers finished the last pass of the bandage, tucking it neatly, and I began packing my kit. That's when I heard her mutter something in her own language, low, sharp syllables that sounded like a curse. "What was that?" I asked without looking up. She switched back to English with a sly smile. "Oh, nothing. Just wondering if I should request a replacement." "A replacement?" "Yes. If my assigned human is defective, I am entitled to a functional one. It's in the treaty." I groaned. "I'm not defective." "Then prove it." I froze again. "Prove what exactly?" She gave me a look that could have melted steel. "That you're capable of claiming what you've earned." "What I've..." I cut myself off, pinching the bridge of my nose. "I didn't earn you." "Oh, you absolutely did," she said, leaning back and resting her arms behind her head in a pose that should have been relaxed but was somehow pure provocation. "You pulled me out of a burning transport, carried me to safety, risked your life. That's not small talk material, human. That's mate-worthy behavior." I grabbed my scanner and checked her vitals to avoid answering. She hummed approvingly at the proximity. "Ah, so you can get close. For a moment there I thought your arms might fall off if you touched me. Your blood pressure is a little elevated," I said mechanically. Her grin widened. "That's because you're here, working your little human hands all over me." I coughed and stepped back. "Drink water. Rest the ankle." She clicked her tongue. "You have no idea how much you're failing this test." "What test?" "The test to see if you're a real male or just a polite disappointment." "That's not a test," I said, snapping my kit closed. "It is now." I shook my head and started toward the exit. But she called after me, her tone teasing, commanding all at once. "Don't run away yet, human." "I'm not running away. I have other patients." "Other patients," she repeated, as though tasting the words. "So they get you, and I get, what? An ankle wrap and a cold handshake?" "I never shook your hand." "Exactly. You're afraid of touching me." I turned, ready to argue, but she was watching me with that same assessing gaze, the one that said she was playing a game I didn't know the rules to. "I'll tell you what, human," she said at last. "I'll give you until tomorrow. One day to decide if you want to prove you're not broken. One day to show me what you're actually made of." I gave a humorless laugh. "And if I don't?" Her smile was slow, wicked. "Then I'll have no choice but to take matters into my own hands, and yours." Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I should have left, but my feet didn't move. My brain felt short-circuited. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming, and for the first time I realized she wasn't just teasing. She was dead serious. "Consider it a challenge," she said softly. "Tomorrow, I'll find out if my human is a man, or a broken toy." I swallowed hard, muttered something about needing to check supplies, and practically fled the med bay. But her voice followed me out the door, low and amused. "Don't keep me waiting, human. I'm very impatient." I was sorting bandages when the sound of fabric hitting the floor made me look up. She stood in the middle of the med bay, robe pooling around her feet like she'd just molted. Completely unapologetic. Completely bare. My mouth went dry. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. "Inspection," she said simply. "Since you refuse to initiate, I'll have to determine the cause of your malfunction myself." I raised a hand, half to shield my eyes, half to wave her back toward the cot. "I told you, I'm not malfunctioning. You've been avoiding physical claiming for days. That is not the behavior of a functional male. Therefore, either you are defective, or you are afraid." She tilted her head, appraising me like I was a broken weapon she might send back to the manufacturer. "I'm not afraid," I muttered. "Then prove it," she said, taking a deliberate step closer. I sidestepped toward my desk, putting a chair between us. "You need to put your clothes back on." She arched a brow. "Does my appearance offend you?" "That's not the point." She leaned on the chair, which creaked under the shift of her weight. "Then perhaps you are incapable of handling me. That would be disappointing." I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm your medic. You're my patient. This is inappropriate." She smirked. "On my world, it would be inappropriate not to. You saved me. That makes you mine." I opened my mouth to argue, but she cut me off, eyes narrowing. "Unless you believe you can't keep up with me. Is that it? Your human stamina is insufficient?" That got under my skin. "I could keep up just fine." "Interesting," she said, the corner of her mouth curling upward. "And yet you hide behind medical ethics as though they were armor." I scrubbed a hand over my face. "This isn't about hiding." "Then why do you keep looking anywhere but at me?" I realized too late that I'd been doing exactly that. My gaze had been darting to walls, shelves, anywhere but the very confident, very unclothed alien standing a few feet away. She leaned forward, resting her hands on the chair back, and purred. "Perhaps if I describe my symptoms, you'll be compelled to treat them." I straightened warily. "What symptoms?" "An ache," she said softly. "Low in my belly. Heat in my blood. A craving that will not go away." Her tone was silk and smoke, curling into my ears. "On my planet, these are treated by direct stimulation." I gripped the back of my neck. "That's not a medical condition. That's you being." She cut me off. "Desperate for a competent male?" "Yes." I stared at her. "You realize if anyone walks in right now, I'll be explaining this to my commanding officer for the rest of the month?" Her eyes gleamed. "Then lock the door." "Problem solved." I tried for stern, but it came out strained. "This is not happening." She took that as a challenge. "So you are broken." "Stop saying that." Her grin widened. "Then prove you're not." I opened my mouth to reply, but she slid the chair aside like it weighed nothing and stepped into my space. Her skin was warm, too warm. My heartbeat kicked into overdrive. "You have no idea how confusing you are, human," she murmured. "Every signal says you want me. But your actions. She traced a finger down my arm, slow, deliberate. Say you'd rather treat me like a fragile piece of glass. You're not fragile, I said before I could stop myself. Exactly. So stop acting like I'll break. She leaned even closer, her breath ghosting my jaw. Touch me. Or admit you can't. My pulse thundered in my ears. I can. Then why haven't you? I hesitated, and that was enough for her. She turned, perching on the edge of my desk, completely at ease in her own skin. This is absurd. You've had days. You've had opportunities. Yet here we are, me unclothed, you, still clothed, still avoiding. I forced my eyes to her face. You want honesty? Fine. I'm trying not to cross a line I can't uncross. You were injured. You needed a medic, not a mate? Exactly. She studied me for a long moment, then said with infuriating calm, So you would rather let me think you're defective than admit you're attracted to me? My silence must have been answer enough because she smirked again. I see. You see nothing. Oh, I see plenty, she said, her gaze flicking pointedly downward. I think your words and your body disagree. Heat flared across my face. You're impossible. And you're infuriating, she countered. But tomorrow I'll have my answer. Either you'll claim me, or I'll assume you need replacing. That's not how this works. It's exactly how this works, she said, standing and retrieving her robe with unhurried grace. Consider this your final warning, human. I am not patient. And I am very, very thorough in my inspections. She tied the robe loosely, leaving far too much skin visible for my sanity, then walked toward the door. Until tomorrow, she said over her shoulder. Try not to malfunction in your sleep. The door hissed shut behind her, and I sagged against the desk, dragging a hand over my face. My medical training hadn't prepared me for this. My combat training hadn't prepared me for this. And worst of all, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted her to stop. She didn't even wait a full day before starting her campaign. The next morning, I walked into the med bay to find her already sitting on the cot, ankle bandage removed, bare legs crossed, robe hanging open just enough to qualify as clothing by technicality. I think my condition has worsened, she said the moment I stepped in. Your ankle looks fine. Not that condition. Her eyes gleamed. The other one. I dropped my kit on the counter. You don't have another condition. Don't I? She slid off the cot, closing the distance between us in a slow, measured way that made my pulse trip. There's still that ache. That craving. And according to you, that's not a medical issue. So perhaps it's an interpersonal one. I stepped sideways to grab a scanner, using it as a flimsy excuse to put space between us. Maybe you should talk to your people about that. I am talking to my people, she said, following me. I'm not your people. She tilted her head. You pulled me from wreckage. You bled for me. You tended my wounds. That makes you mine by every law I know. I turned to face her. That's not how it works for humans. Then your species is foolish. She reached out, tracing my chest lightly with one finger as though mapping the shape of my heartbeat. Do you deny wanting me? I swallowed hard. That's not the issue. Then the issue, she said softly, is you denying yourself? I caught her wrist before her hand could wander further. This is called restraint. Her mouth curved. Restraint is a word males use when they're afraid they'll lose control. I'm not. Yes, she interrupted smoothly. You are. I exhaled sharply. You think you've got me all figured out. I know exactly what I'm doing. She stepped closer, and I had to back up until the counter pressed into my spine. Humans need encouragement. Encouragement? I echoed. She nodded, that wicked little smile deepening. Seduction protocol. Before I could stop her, she untied her robe and let it slip again, standing close enough that her warmth radiated against me. Step 1, she murmured. Proximity. I glanced at the door. This is a workplace. Step 2, she continued, ignoring me. Contact. She laid her palm flat against my chest, fingers splaying slightly. I caught her wrist again. You're relentless. Step 3, she said, leaning in until her breath brushed my ear. Provocation. What exactly are you hoping to? She pressed her lips just under my jaw, feather-light, and my words jammed in my throat. She pulled back with a grin. Ah. There it is. Your pulse doesn't lie, human. I stared at her. You're insane. Possibly. Step 4, escalation. She slid her hands down my sides slowly, deliberately, until they rested at my hips. This is where most males break. I caught her hands and set them back at her sides. Not this male. She raised a brow. You're making me work for it. I like that. I grabbed a fresh bandage roll, trying to redirect the situation. Your ankle needs rewrapping. My ankle is fine. I'm still doing it. Then I'm sitting in your lap while you do. No, you're. She was already moving, straddling the chair I'd just pulled out, then dragging it toward me. Better access for you. And I can keep a close eye on your reactions. I resisted the urge to rub my temples. This isn't how medicine works. This isn't medicine, she purred. This is diagnostics. You're impossible. And you're stubborn. She leaned forward, placing her elbows on her knees so she could rest her chin in her hands, watching me like I was an experiment in progress. Tell me, human, how long do you think you can keep this up? As long as it takes. Her smirk widened. Challenge accepted. The rest of the day was a gauntlet. Every time I turned around, she was finding new ways to test me, dropping things so she could bend over in front of me, claiming she needed temperature checks that required skin contact, leaning over my shoulder so her breath ghosted my ear while I worked. By mid-afternoon, I was seriously considering locking myself in the supply closet until her shift in the med bay was over. She caught me looking toward the door. Thinking of fleeing? Thinking of working? Thinking of avoiding? I'm thinking of not getting court-martialed. Your military should award you medals for endurance. She paused, then added slyly. Or perhaps pity medals, for being so tragically repressed. I gave her a look. You're enjoying this way too much. Of course I am, she said, unabashed. I'm winning. You haven't won anything yet. Her eyes narrowed playfully. Oh, I will. I was checking inventory when she moved behind me. Her hands slid around my waist, palms flattening against my abdomen. I went rigid. Relax, she whispered. This is still part of the protocol. This is harassment. This is science. I turned to face her, but she didn't step back. You're out of your mind. And you're out of excuses, she countered. Step 5, persistence. Tomorrow, final evaluation. What happens if I fail? I asked warily. She smiled like a predator. Then I take over completely. And trust me, human, my bedside manner is nothing like yours. I stared at her, searching for a way to shut this down that didn't involve physical removal. But the truth was, my brain wasn't exactly running on logic anymore. Her scent, her proximity, the way she looked at me like she could see straight through my defenses, it was all stacking the odds against me. Sleep well, she said, brushing past me on her way to the door. You'll need the rest. The door hissed open, and she was gone, leaving me gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I'd survived another round. Barely. Tomorrow, she was going to try again. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to win. She didn't knock. The door hissed open and she marched into the med bay like she owned it, robe tied only halfway, eyes locked on me. It's time for your final evaluation, human. I didn't even look up from the data pad. Your ankle's fine. You don't need to be here. This isn't about my ankle. She stepped closer, letting the robe slide open another dangerous inch. It's about determining if my human is functional. I set the datapad aside. You've been harassing me for days. She smiled. Persistence. Step 5, remember? You're relentless. And you're running out of excuses. She closed the gap between us until I could feel the heat radiating off her skin. So, one last chance? Claim me, or admit you're broken. I held her gaze. You think it's that simple? It is. Her voice softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. Unless you're still going to pretend this isn't what you want. I exhaled, leaning back against the counter. You've been injured. You've been my patient. You have no idea how dangerous it is for me to cross that line. She leaned in, her lips almost brushing mine. You have no idea how dangerous it is for you not to. My hand twitched at my side. Every instinct screamed to hold the line, keep it professional. But her scent, her voice, the way she looked at me like I was the only male in the galaxy, it was breaking through every defense I had. I pushed off the counter and stepped into her space. You want proof I'm not broken? Her smile turned slow and wicked. Yes. Fine. My hands caught her waist, pulling her closer. Her breath itched, the smallest sign I'd actually surprised her. There he is, she murmured, fingers sliding up my chest. This is me crossing the line, I said. Don't mistake it for me losing control. I like you better without the armor. She breathed. Her hands cupped my face, pulling me into a kiss that was anything but cautious. Heat surged through me, and for the first time, I stopped thinking about ethics, protocol, or consequences. She tasted like spice and victory. When we finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. Functional, she whispered. Perfectly functional. I chuckled low in my throat. Satisfied? Not yet, she said, smiling against my lips. But I'm willing to keep testing. I shook my head, still holding her close. You're going to get me court-martialed. Then I'll defend you, she said simply. I'll tell them I seduced you against your will. That's not exactly better. It's true, she said with mock innocence. And they'll believe me. Look at you, you don't have the face of a predator. You have the face of a male who just realized he's been hunted the whole time. I laughed despite myself. You're dangerous. And you, she countered, are mine. Her tone left no room for debate. She straightened the robe loosely, though it didn't exactly cover much, and moved toward the door. Before stepping out, she glanced back. Consider yourself officially claimed human. I'll expect regular, follow-up sessions. You're unbelievable. She grinned. And you're not broken. Congratulations. The doors slid shut behind her, leaving me alone in the med bay with my pulse still pounding. I sat heavily in the nearest chair, running a hand over my face. I'd survived her relentless seduction protocol, barely, but the truth was she'd won. Completely. A chime from my console broke my thoughts. Incoming message from command, report to medical immediately. Your patient has filed a statement regarding excessive recovery assistance. I stared at the screen, then groaned. Of course she had. When I stepped into the hall a few minutes later, she was waiting, leaning casually against the wall. Did they call you in? She asked, all false innocence. Yes, I said flatly. She stepped in close enough for only me to hear. You're welcome. You're insane, I muttered. You're mine, she corrected, then brushed a quick kiss against my jaw and walked away, her laughter echoing down the corridor. And I realized, with a sinking and slightly thrilling certainty, that she wasn't done. Not by a long shot.